Shalom and welcome to 2 Minutes of Torah. This year is entitled Mitzvah Yishuv Haaretz. The weeks between Yom HaSpit and Yom HaShalayim, a wonderful time to discuss the Mitzvah Yishuv Haaretz. It says in the Psukim in Matas Maseh, Rashim Das V'Yishavtem Ba, which can go ahead and conquer the land. It's Machlokes among the Rishonim, what that pasuk is teaching us. The Rambam does not list the mitzvah of Yishuv Haaretz in the 613 mitzvot. The Ramban, its famous commentary on the Rambam Saifer Mitzvah, Mitzvah Dalet, writes that it is a mitzvah. Even though the Rambam does not consider it part of Tayyag, he does talk about the importance. Lo Mido Adam Eretz Yisrael, should always live in Eretz Yisrael. He doesn't use the word Chiyuv. He does say it's a proper thing to do, and he does bring down the halacha that a man can force a wife to go to Eretz Yisrael, and a wife can force a husband to go to Eretz Yisrael. If not, they can demand the ksuv and the get. So even though one doesn't count it as one of the tayyag, he does hold that there's some kind of mitzvah. But the Ramban holds it's tayyag, and then you have the famous Shitot of Tosfot in the ksuvos, where he writes that the sakaras rachim is one factor. And if there's a danger to get there, then that would knock out the mitzvah. And then Rav Chaim Tosfot says it doesn't apply today because there's the mitzvah trum on mas and that one and other mitzvot that one may end up violating, so it's not going to be worth it coming to Eretz and then you violate the mitzvah. So therefore, it doesn't apply today if a husband forcing the wife forcing the husband. So those are some sheets from the Rishonim. Rambam that talks about moving and talks about the spouse forcing the spouse to go, but doesn't consider it one of the tayyag. The Ramban does consider it tayyag, and he says one has to go in all times, in all generations. And then finally you have Tosfot Shita, who holds that there's no mitzvah, and it's not applicable today. The husband forcing the wife forcing the husband. So the Shulchan Aruch does bring down the Rambam's halacha, says it does apply, and he does not say that there's some generations that does not apply, and therefore seems to say that if the husband forces the wife forces the husband, it seems to be that's a mitzvah to go. And that's what the Pitchai Teshuva there says, that there is a mitzvah in all generations to go, and we go like the Ramban. That's how we follow the Pitchai Teshuva says, and not like the Tosfot Shita even goes as far as to say that maybe Tosfot Shita, it wasn't really from Tosfos. But that's not a simple answer. The simple pshat is the rove majority of Shonim go like the Ramban, that the halacha does still apply today. The mitzvahs for all generations, and therefore husband force a wife force a husband. Of course, regarding the breaking up a marriage to go to Israel, that's something that obviously would have to be discussed with the rabbi and others as well, and friends of the family, before husband says, okay, I'm going to Israel, I'm going to divorce her, or she says, I want to go to Israel, I want to divorce from him. That obviously has to be worked out properly. But be that as it may, this post can bring it down. Halacha l'maisa. Pitchai Teshuva just says that we see from all the Rishonim that we do paskin this way. That's a mitzvah to go to Eretz Yisrael. And just as one caveat, he writes that a person who's living in the Chutz La'aretz and be able to make a living, and he could spend some time learning every day, the Torah, and then he's going to go to Eretz Yisrael, and he won't have a living, he won't be able to learn, and he'll end up relying on handouts. He says that, no way. He says that's not the way to go, and children can go off the derech by the family now all of a sudden being in poverty. And he says that you certainly have to take into consideration. Fine, that's the Pitchai Teshuva's conclusion. He says regarding the danger, you have to see, is it dangerous to physically make aliyah or not? A person lives in the time of crusades, maybe it is. The person lives in 2015, then it's not dangerous physically to make aliyah. Okay, that's the Pitchai Teshuva. So you have the Rambam, the Ramban, and Tosfos. You have the Shulchan Aruch paskening that you do go up. Seems to be that he does not go like Tosfos. Pitchai Teshuva says yes, that's correct. He doesn't go like Tosfos because it's a minor opinion. And the Pitchai Teshuva just warns you of the criteria to make sure that you don't do it in a rational manner, the aliyah. Fine. Then you have Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe comes along and says, is a mitzvah to make aliyah or not? He says, well, you have to take into account Tosfos Shita and see how you can be careful about it or not. And then, of course, you have the Ramban's Shita, that you should go. So a person has to look through and think through all the different sides and see if it's realistic or not. And then he says, but you should know, no one holds it's a chiyuv, because a chiyuv is, if it's a real chiyuv to go, then everyone who's living outside of Eretz Yisrael is a sinner. And where do you see the Rishonim say it's asur to live in Eretz outside of Eretz Yisrael? All they say is that if you live in Eretz Yisrael, it's asur to leave. They should just say, no, it's asur to be in Eretz Yisrael because you're being mevatel a chiyuv asay. So obviously what do you have to say? That it's not a chiyuv to live in Eretz Yisrael, rather it's what? A very, very important mitzvah, became a mitzvah, but not a chiyuv. The only question is, the Maiafar Kumi, Rav Zvi Glatt HY, asked Rav Moshe, the Ramban uses the word chayav. How do you ignore the word chayav? Which is a very good question. Interesting, that tragedy. Rav Zvi Glatt was in Merkaz Arav. He was killed as a young man, and they found the manuscripts in the base medrash after he was killed, and they had the whole beautiful Saifer on Eretz Yisrael. They showed it to Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe looked at it, especially chapter 5, which tells where Rav Zvi Glatt, this youngster, challenges Rav Moshe and criticizes. Listen, Rav Moshe says, I still hold by my position, but it's a beautiful, beautiful Saifer. I disagree with you on this specific criticism of my position. It's a beautiful Saifer. You should read it, for Yagid Tov Yadid, along the Sugi, and also it's a tremendous Zeicher for the young author who was killed in the prime of his life. Just to conclude, Rav Moshe has a difficulty. Maiafar Kumi asks a good question, Rav Moshe. The Ramban does use the word chiyuv, so how do you go ahead and not have, and Rav Moshe, how do you say it's not a chiyuv when the Ramban says the word chayav? It's a very good question. I only have a speculative answer that maybe when the Ramban, he says the word chiyuv, then Rav Moshe says, okay, many Rishonim go like the Ramban. What he needs to say is, in contrast to Tosfot. Tosfot says there's no chiyuv anymore, there's no mitzvah anymore. But most Rishonim go like the Ramban, that there is still a mitzvah. So when the Rav Moshe says that most Rishonim go like the Ramban, he doesn't mean he goes like the Ramban, literally a chiyuv. They go like the Ramban, it's a mitzvah. The word that many of them use is mitzvah to go up. Only the Ramban uses the word chayav. And therefore, Rav Moshe says, what he means to say is it is a mitzvah to go up. What he means to say is that, like the Ramban, meaning like that positive sheet of Eretz Yisrael, going to Eretz Yisrael, but not the specific word of the Ramban. He used the word chayav. Yes, the Ramban used the word chayav. That's not what the majority of the Rishonim use. They use the word mitzvah, and that's why Rav Moshe has a conclusion of a mitzvah kiyumit, and not an absolute mitzvah chiyuvit. That's a bit of an overview of the whole sugya. Of course, one shouldn't go ahead and just say, okay, I hold like Rav Moshe, it's mitzvah kiyumit, it's not an obligation. I don't stand up for laning, that's a mitzvah kiyumit, and I don't wear a hand jacket for davening, it's a kiyumit, it's not a chiyuv. In my circles, I walk around outside all the time without a hand jacket, so I'm not chayiv to wear a hand jacket, so it's a mitzvah kiyumit to wear a hand jacket, so it's a mitzvah kiyumit to come to Israel. Even the Rav Moshe and that approach is not going to say, is this a kiyumit and this is a kiyumit, it's just an optional kind of thing, it's a nice thing to do. Eretz Yisrael, even if you don't want an absolute chiyuv, Yishuv Haaretz is such an important mitzvah. It's the whole building of the nation. That's what our future is. And to just make that into stam kiyumit, no, Moshe is kiyum mitzvah, but there's a kiyum mitzvah and then there's a kiyum mitzvah. And it's important to, of course, look at this again in a very proper, objective manner and not just go ahead and run for a Haitev. First has to really see the full sugya and see what applies to him, what not, talk it over with the Rav and family members, etc. So that's just a bit of an overview of the mitzvah of Yishuv Haaretz. Shalom.